Hello and a warm welcome to Federal special program Capital Beat. Supreme Court of India upheld yesterday the abrogation of Article 370, saying very clearly in the judgment that Article 370 was a temporary provision and also that the President of India was well within his rights to declare that Article 370 ceases to exist. Also in the judgment, the court directed the center, or rather the election commission, to hold elections to the UT of J&K by 30th of September 2024, and has also directed the authorities to restore the statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. Now, what is the larger import of this verdict? What does this verdict mean for the people of Jammu and Kashmir? What does it mean for constitution and federalism? Joining me now is Radha Kumar, the noted writer, policy analyst, and also who was a former member to the group of interlocutors to Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you, Radha Kumar, so much for joining on the Federal. And it's a pleasure having you on the program. And ma'am, my first question to you is that, of course, what are your first thoughts to this verdict which just came in yesterday?
I was deeply, deeply disappointed. I might actually say I was anguished. To my mind, this is a judgment that has betrayed all the hopes that we had as petitioners or that the people of the Kashmir Valley had.
You were saying that you are pained and anguished. Now, what were you really expecting out of this judgment? Because there seems to be no balancing as far as the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir are concerned. So what would you really say to that?
Look, first of all, I cannot claim that I had high expectations. I did not. But, even when you do not expect, you still are shocked and pained when it happens. And that is how I feel about this judgment. Now, look, first and foremost, here is a series of actions, starting with the president's orders, that happen only when 5,500 people have been arrested and put in detention or in jail. The day before the announcement, the evening before the announcement. And the court says that there is nothing mala fide in this. I just simply do not understand. How can it not be mala fide if you feel the necessity to put more than 5,000 people in jail before you do it? And, those 5,000 people include 3 former chief ministers. All the political leadership, most of the elected legislators. So don't tell me that you don't have, at the very least, an inkling that this is going to be protested by almost everybody.
Right.
So that's the first. The second thing is that here is really extremely strong actions that have been taken. You have taken away the status, the identity. You have taken away statehood. You have taken away, most importantly, the right to be consulted. Last I heard, we were still a democracy. I have to confess, I have grave doubts as to whether we have any element of democracy left in our country, because the court has justified all of these actions. Right. I don't understand. It's 10 years since Jammu and Kashmir. Now, you talk about September 24. What is this? Why are you giving another almost year, 9-10 months, for elections to be held? The only argument I can see over here is you're saying, okay, let it happen after the general elections.
So but why? You mean to say that the court could have announced the elections to the Jammu and Kashmir along with the general elections?
No, they could have done it much earlier.
Right.
We've got state elections coming up in January, February. What prevents you? You have done all your redoing of electoral lists, this, that, the other. You have done a fresh and hugely contested delimitation, how much more delay is permissible? And here you have given delay. You have permitted more and more and more delay. You said they have directed, the court has directed the government to restore statehood. Actually, they haven't. They have said the Solicitor General has assured us that statehood will be restored at some point. At what point?
Yeah. So, ma'am, in a way, are you saying that the verdict hasn't taken into account the historical context of this whole idea of Article 370, how it was brought in, and perhaps, and that's the reason why it doesn't seem to have done justice to the people of Jammu and Kashmir?
Yes, I would say that there seem to be some clear gaps in perhaps the information that was provided to the court. I should say again, I am not a lawyer, and I'm not criticizing from the point of view of constitutional law, because I'm not an expert on that. But first of all, the argument that it was temporary, Article 370. It was temporary originally because our constitution was passed and adopted well before Jammu and Kashmir had even established or elected a constituent assembly. Now, by the way, Jammu and Kashmir's constituent assembly was elected. It was not nominated.
Right.
So you could say that it represented, in that sense, more accurately, the views of the people. To the extent that elected representatives represent the views of the people. And the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution was finally adopted in 1956, 6 years after our Constitution. And in that, it makes very clear that the relationship of the state to the Union of India is based on 370.
Right.
And it says that that is a permanent relationship. So you do have a constitution that does say it's a permanent relationship. Now, the only question that arises is, well, given that the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution said it was permanent, why is it that the Constitution of India was not amended to remove that article from temporary provisions?
Okay, yeah.
But it seems to me that that is a very technical point. You have in our constitution also under, provisional elements. You have Articles 371 8J giving various kinds of distinct status to 10 states. So what happens? They are also all temporary. They can also all go. There is no real discussion of this, as you are aware. The Nagaland government had in 2019 itself, after 370 was removed or vitiated, the Nagas asked that we hope this is not going to affect our rights under the peace agreement that was then put into the Constitution of India.
Right.
The same could be asked by the people of Meghalaya.
Absolutely.
Or Mizoram.
Right. Of course, it's very clear from what you are saying that this verdict perhaps could have an impact on federalism or the principles of federalism. So are you saying in a way that it could have an impact in other states, maybe like northeastern states where you have special status provisions? So this verdict could impact seriously?
Look, now theoretically, there is nothing to stop the union executive from doing what it likes to states. If we take this judgment to what we in India are tempted to call its logical conclusion. Terrible phrase, but anyway. So if you go by this judgment, what is to stop a union executive from declaring emergency-like conditions in a state and dissolving the legislative assembly and then going ahead and doing whatever it wants. But I think more important than that, in a theoretical or more far-reaching sense, is our constitution has always had a mix of strong center and federal rights of states. Now, I would say that actually from yesterday, I started to feel an acute loss of Shanti Bhushan, if you remember, not only a very senior constitutional lawyer, but law minister under the Janta government.
Yes.
When this type of issue came up, Shanti Bhushan said, look, you have to understand that in a federal structure, even with a strong center, our tilt has to be towards federal rights. When you talk about a quasi-federal, the emphasis has to be on federal, not on union. He was completely right.
Right.
It was...
Ma'am, what you're saying just reminds me of a line which was there as part of the judgment, and I'm just going to read it out, that while a state under precedent rule can do any act, now, and it cannot be subject to legal scrutiny. And it very clearly said that all the decisions which are taken by the center on behalf of the state legislature, and especially if it is under precedent rule, it cannot be put to legal scrutiny. Now, does this give unbridled powers to the center to do whatever they want and just through a presidential order?
Yes. I mean, I think that there is a really serious problem on that issue, which is that originally, what was the idea of appointing governors? Governors were to report to they were appointed by the president. They were supposed to report to the president on the situation of stability or security in the state, not on anything else. And the assumption was that governors would be non-political, eminent people who understood what administrative balance, justice, equity, etc. meant. In fact, as various Supreme Court judges have over time reminded the president's office and the prime minister's office, the cabinet, that the governor is supposed to represent the interests and desires of the state to the center. It is not supposed to be the other way around. But we have now a situation where most governments are political appointees. Look at Satyapal Malik, whom I'm sorry to say I have very little respect for. But the man comes out and says that I was instructed to just sign blindly, and I did so.
Right.
I mean, if this is the kind of person you are appointing as governor, where is the balance? Where is the wall that should stand between executive or political wrongdoing and the rights of the people of this country?
Right. But rather than what worries everyone is the fact that after now, since this verdict has come, will this verdict not legitimize in a way the subversion of the federal principles? And how will you go on challenging it in the court then? They will always give a reference that, look, this is what 370 verdict said.
Well, I mean, look, the unfortunate thing is that here is the highest institution of constitutional law in this country. You look at their judgments over a period of time and you constantly find one judgment contradicting the other. Look at the way that they have brushed aside Rohinton Nariman's judgment on 370, that the passage of time had made it permanent. And not only the passage of time, but the acceptance. The acceptance by both the people, their elected representatives, and the union administration had made it permanent. This is a fairly compelling argument. But what have they done in this 476-page judgment? They've just brushed it aside, saying it's not relevant, it doesn't apply.
Right.
How can it not apply?
Absolutely. So one last question, ma'am. It's very clear from the conversation we've had that, this verdict at least seems to be brushing aside all the sanctity of the legal processes and the democratic norms. So now, how does it unfold for the people of Jammu and Kashmir? Are they in for bad times really as to what's going to happen? But BJP keeps, claiming that Jammu and Kashmir will return to normalcy. Look, there is so much of infrastructure development. There are so many jobs. This, that. So, what will the people of Jammu and Kashmir will have to face now post this verdict?
Well, it's always difficult to predict, isn't it? But let me say, first of all, what is so disturbing is how many lies have been told about what is happening there. It is absolutely untrue that the state is doing extremely well economically. It has nosedived compared to what it was in 2012, 13, and even a little earlier. You can just look at the Niti Aayog's own reports and rankings over a period of 10 years to see how the state has suffered. Unemployment is as high as it ever was, if not higher. There have not been new jobs created. That's just completely untrue. As to infrastructure development, well, you have tunnels that collapse. Hardly an advertisement for infrastructure development. So and if you visit the valley, there is a hangdog air everywhere. It's just a very sad, sad place to go. Srinagar, that I remember, was blossoming in the 2010s. It looks tragic now. It's dusty and miserable and nothing is good over there. You and I know perfectly well that you can tell very easily when people are hopeful and happy and when they are not. The city bears that. The atmosphere is laden with either hope or despair. And if you go to the valley, then what you see and smell and feel is just despair. And that, I don't understand how people can make all these absurd claims about, oh, new day, new dawn, every child will get this, every scheduled caste or scheduled tribe member will benefit. Already you have organizations of the scheduled tribes protesting because new tribes are being included in the definition, and they feel that means they're going to have to share the pie, and their share will get smaller. That may not actually be true, but that's how they feel, because once again, you have not consulted them, you have not discussed all of this in proper detail with any of them. And look at the delimitation. What have you done? You have created more and more Hindu majority and Muslim majority areas. What happened to the idea of diversity, pluralism, people mixing? They have lived together. Look at Poonch Rajouri. They had lived together in some of the worst of times. And now you've gone inside, you're separating them from the rest of Jammu. How is this helping anybody? I mean, even people in Jammu who had welcomed what happened in 2019 are now beginning to doubt, because more and more mainland people are trying to claim citizenship there, claiming land is being given to corporates rather than to local industrialists or entrepreneurs. They have this sense of dispossession at almost every level. But you talk about, the government is saying now everyone has rights of education. But excuse me.
No, but what could be the immediate fallout of this verdict now? Are we going to see this sense of despair and despondency growing much more than what it was, because now people are left with no hope? What are we going to really see as an immediate fallout?
Look, it seems to me that alienation, as far as the valley is concerned, and possibly even Kargil, is now complete.
Okay.
This judgment has sort of put the final little nail in the coffin. It was, let's not attribute too much to the court. Their nail is tiny in comparison to what the union executive has done. But nevertheless, it is the final nail. And that is how people are going to be seeing it. Now, how will that impact, for example, on the security situation is difficult to say. I would expect the re-rise of militancy. However, we must always bear in mind that that takes time. You're not going to see it right now. You may not see it for 1 year. You may see it after 2 years. That's what happened in the 80s after the botched elections. It took a good 2 years before militancy rose to its height. Scattered incidents you already see, as you did then.
Yeah. That's really worrisome to hear, but it was wonderful to have you on the program, Radha ma'am. It was enlightening to hear you also on all these aspects. Thank you so much for joining on The Federal. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this interview, subscribe to our channel, send us your feedback, and stay tuned to The Federal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Subscribe to The Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.